My protégé accused me of the unthinkable, and my managers let them end my career. Years later, her confession exposed a truth they never saw coming. People said I was a loner. Maybe I was. I never liked small talk, never joined the guys for lunch, never saw the point in wasting words when machines made more sense anyway. My name's Damon. I'm 33, been living in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania my whole life. I work as a technician at Hanford Steel, a mid-sized fabrication plant that makes parts for heavy industry. I'd been there for almost 8 years when Jenna showed up. She was an intern fresh out of community college, all nervous smiles and oversized safety goggles. The kind of girl who said sorry even when she sneezed. For some reason, she gravitated toward me from day one. At first, I figured she'd get bored like the others, or maybe someone in HR told her to stick by the quiet guy. Either way, she started shadowing me, asking questions, writing things down. I didn't make it easy. Didn't say much unless I had to, but she didn't let up. She wanted to understand everything: belt alignment tolerances, oil film strength, the weird noise a gearbox makes when a bearing's on its way out. And after a while, I started looking forward to her being there. We didn't talk about much beyond work, but I noticed when she wasn't around. When Jenna got hired on full-time, it was almost a relief. She started doing real maintenance tasks, and if anyone else gave her crap, which they did, she shut it down fast. She had a way of being sharp without raising her voice. If someone said I was weird for locking up my workspace at night, she'd shoot back. He rebuilt that mixer gearbox from scrap in 2 weeks. Maybe keep your opinions to yourself. It didn't take long for people to start whispering. You see how she always sits by Damon at meetings? I heard he went off on that sales guy who wouldn't stop flirting with her. That last one was true. A vendor from Protégé Industrial started getting too familiar during a site visit. Jenna looked uncomfortable, so I told the guy straight up, she's here to work, not to get hit on. Back off. He laughed it off, but the message landed. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel protective of her. But it wasn't romantic, not from my side, anyway. She reminded me of myself when I first started out, like she needed someone in her corner. And that corner happened to be me. The shop floor wasn't exactly a nurturing environment. The managers didn't understand why I spent my Saturdays in the parts graveyard, pulling busted pumps apart to see what could be salvaged, or why I bolted my locker shut even though I didn't keep anything valuable inside. To them, I was just that guy who grunted more than he talked and refused to share his tools. But Jenna got it. One Friday, we stayed late reassembling a hydraulic press. She was sitting cross-legged on the concrete, covered in grime, grinning because we'd finally gotten the pressure balance just right. This is the part one like, she said, wiping sweat from her forehead. Making something broken work again. I remember thinking, yeah, me too. It wasn't much, but it felt like something real in a place where most conversations ended with someone mocking your lunch or bragging about who got the latest contract bonus. It felt like clarity. Still, I knew the way people looked at us. Like they were just waiting for one of us to screw up and prove their theories right. Jenna once joked about it. Maybe we should just give him a show and get it over with. I laughed, but the air shifted after that. There were lines you didn't cross, and people who didn't understand that thought they could redraw them for you. I didn't know it yet, but the lines were already starting to blur. Not between us, but around us, behind our backs. And by the time I realized how far things had gone, it would be too late. The first sign that something was wrong came on a Tuesday. I was finishing up a calibration on the North Bay mill when I saw that vendor again, the same one I'd warned once already. Greg from Protégé. Smarmy grin, slick hair, a polo shirt a size too tight like he thought he was in a GQ photo shoot instead of an industrial plant. And there he was again, leaning too close to Jenna by the water cooler, cracking jokes like they were old friends. I didn't even think. I walked straight over. Is there a reason you're still on this floor? I asked, voice low but clear. He smirked, like he'd been waiting for me. Relax, Damon. Just catching up with a friend. She's not your friend. She's staff. And if you want to talk to her, go through the front office like everybody else. Jenna's eyes widened. It's okay, Damon. He was just. No, I cut in, not taking my eyes off Greg. This is the second time. There won't be a third. He chuckled, raised his hands in mock surrender. Touchy. I'll let you two get back to your little fortress of solitude. Then he turned and walked out like nothing had happened. Jenna stayed frozen a second, then grabbed her water bottle and walked the other way. Didn't say thanks. Didn't look back. Just disappeared into the break room. By the next morning, the rumors had teeth. You hear Damon went off on a vendor over Jenna? Word is he threatened the guy. Dude's obsessed. She can't even talk to people without him showing up. I heard it in snippets. Whispered between welders. Joked about in the tool crib. No one said it to my face, but I wasn't deaf. Jenna stopped coming by the workshop that week. She didn't return my messages. Didn't ask about the pump schematic I left on her desk. She even switched out of our maintenance rotation. Just like that. At first, I thought maybe she was just laying low, letting things die down. But Friday rolled around, and she was still avoiding me like I had a contagious disease. I caught her near the tool cage once, asked if we could talk. "Now's not a good time," she said without meeting my eyes. "I have a lot on my plate." That wasn't like her. The break room incident happened 3 days later. I'd stayed late finishing a bearing alignment on one of the new lathes. The place was nearly empty when I went to grab my stuff. That's when I saw her. Jenna, sitting at the break room table, shoulders slumped, face in her hands. Quiet, but not still. Her back shook, once, twice. Then a muffled sob slipped out. I stepped in, slow and careful. "Jenna." She jerked upright like I'd shouted. Her eyes were red, cheeks damp. "Are you okay?" I asked, stopping a few feet away. She shook her head fast. I'm fine. Please, just go." "You're not fine," I said softly. "Talk to me. What's going on?" She looked at me then, really looked, and what I saw in her eyes chilled me. Not sadness. Not grief. Fear. "Damon," she said, voice tight. "Please. Just leave me alone." It felt like a slap, but I did what she asked. I backed out, one step at a time, and left her there with her hands clenched tight in her lap like she was bracing for something worse. I didn't know what had changed between us, but something had. Something deep and mean and crawling beneath the surface. I could feel it in the air, in the way people avoided eye contact when I walked by, in the sudden silence that followed every room I entered. They thought they knew the story. They thought I was the problem. And Jenna? She wasn't saying anything to stop them. It started like any other morning. I clocked in just before 6, like always. The security guard at the gate gave me a nod, same as yesterday. I grabbed a black coffee from the vending machine, walked past the break room, and made my way to Bay 2. I was halfway through prepping for a gearbox flush when 2 guys in suits I'd never seen before stepped into the shop. "Damon Price?" one of them asked. I wiped my hands on a rag. "Yeah, we're from corporate security. We need you to come with us. HR's waiting." They didn't say anything else. Just turned and walked like I was supposed to follow. Inside the HR office, the air was too cold and the walls were too white. A woman named Carla from corporate sat at the head of the table. Our plant manager, Phil, was there too, avoiding my eyes like a kid who broke a window and didn't want to admit it. They told me to sit, then closed the door. Carla folded her hands. "Damon, we've received a formal complaint regarding your conduct." I didn't move. "From who?" She slid a manila folder across the table. "Jenna Markey. She submitted a detailed report last night." It was like the floor dropped out from under me. I blinked. "What kind of complaint?" Phil shifted in his chair. "Carla didn't. She alleges that you used your seniority and experience to create a hostile work environment. That you pressured her into staying late, often alone with you in isolated areas of the plant. That you made comments she interpreted as threats, especially after she began seeing someone outside of work." I stared at her. I heard the words. I just couldn't make sense of them. "That's not true," I said, my voice flat. "She claims you discouraged her from forming relationships with vendors and other male staff. That you locked her into an unhealthy dynamic and retaliated when she tried to assert boundaries." I started, but Carla raised a hand. "You'll have time to respond in writing," she said. "Effective immediately, you're suspended pending the outcome of a formal investigation." Phil finally spoke. "Your workshop will be photographed and inspected. Any personal belongings will be held until further notice." It felt like someone hit mute on the world. I just sat there while the noise around me faded. Carla was still talking, something about zero tolerance and confidentiality. Phil kept adjusting his collar. The 2 security guys hovered by the door, hands clasped, like they were waiting for me to bolt. "I never touched her," I said finally. "I never even raised my voice to her." "That's what the investigation is for," Carla replied. They walked me out through the main hallway, past the lockers, past the break room, where half the crew had conveniently decided to take a coffee break all at once. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. They saw the suits, the security escort, the blank look on my face. They knew. I caught a glimpse of my bay as we passed, the doors propped open, a camera flash going off. A guy from facilities was holding up one of my customized wrenches, the one I'd modified for a tight access job on the extrusion press. It looked normal to me, but the way they held it up, snapping photos, murmuring to each other, you'd think they'd found a weapon. Back home, I sat in my van for almost an hour. Didn't go inside. Didn't turn the engine off. Just stared at the dashboard and tried to breathe. None of it made sense. Jenna had pulled away, sure. She cried in the break room, sure. But this? A complaint? Alleging manipulation, threats? She knew me. She knew I'd never hurt her. Never even crossed a line. But now she was saying I had. And the world had already decided who to believe. By nightfall, the rumors were everywhere. People I'd worked with for years weren't answering my calls. The union rep left me a voicemail that sounded like a funeral director offering condolences. Jenna hadn't said a word to me, not even a text. I opened the investigation file they emailed me. 10 pages of clipped language and twisted context. Notes about odd tool modifications. Accusations that I isolated her in controlled spaces. Descriptions of my workspace as restricted, locked, inaccessible to others. Everything I did to protect my tools, my process, my sanity, it was now evidence. Circumstantial, sure, but damning. There was one line that stuck with me. A quote attributed to Jenna. It wasn't always obvious. He didn't threaten me directly, but I knew if I pulled away, there would be consequences. I read it 3 times, and each time, it broke me a little more. It gave me a choice. After 2 weeks of silence, my union-appointed lawyer called with a tone that told me the game was already over before I picked up. His name was Hal. Middle-aged, low energy, sounded like he'd been doing this too long to care. They're offering a settlement, he said. I didn't say anything. Payout equals 12 weeks' salary, plus a neutral reference and sealed HR file. In exchange, you resign voluntarily and sign a non-disclosure agreement. No lawsuit. No arbitration. No press. They're admitting I didn't do anything? Hal hesitated. No. But they're calling it a mutual separation. It's how these things go. No charges. None. But let me be real with you, Damon. They don't want you back. And with the write-up they've got, you'd be hard-pressed to find another shop that'll touch you. I gripped the phone harder. So I lose everything. Or I lose everything quietly. You keep your record clean. That's something. I hung up. I didn't call back. I didn't need to. The next day, I signed. They said the NDA was standard. That no one would talk, not Jenna, not HR, not the company. It was all sealed. But silence cuts both ways. I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't explain. I couldn't even say I was innocent. By Monday, I was gone. I drove back to the plant one last time to collect my things. Security didn't let me pass the lobby. A junior HR rep handed me a taped-up cardboard box with my name scribbled on it in Sharpie. My old locker tag was still taped to the top, PRC 12, like they couldn't be bothered to peel it off. Inside were my gloves, my calibration gauges, a few tattered manuals, and a company-branded mug I never used. My wrench set was missing. My notebooks, the ones I'd filled over the years with sketches, rebuild diagrams, custom tolerances, gone. I didn't ask. I just walked out. The first week was the hardest. Every noise outside made me flinch, like I was waiting for someone to come knock on my door with a new accusation. I couldn't go near the grocery store without worrying someone from the plant would see me and whisper. People didn't say anything online. They didn't have to. The silence was louder than any headline. I applied to 3 shops in the county. Got polite emails back. We're looking for a different skill set. We've filled the role. No response. I stopped checking. When the settlement money came through, I used most of it to pay off my credit card and renew my van's registration. The rest went fast, gas, cheap motels, parts for side jobs. I started picking up work wherever I could. Old farmers with busted tractors. Trailer park landlords with dead HVACs. Machine shop dropouts who needed a lathe tuned and didn't ask questions. I lived out of my van most nights. I used Dodge with a dent in the back door and Apache AC system. I rigged a curtain behind the front seats for privacy. Parked by the river or behind laundromats where no one asked questions. Ate cold canned ravioli on more nights than I'd like to admit. Some jobs paid cash. Others paid in IOUs or used parts. But I made do. One time, I ran into a former coworker at a gas station. Troy. Electrical team. He looked at me like I was a ghost. Man, I heard you took the deal, he said. I was darting around like someone might see him talking to me. I nodded. You know people still talk, right? Like, that you were obsessed with her or something. I didn't say anything. Troy shifted awkwardly. I don't think you did it, for what it's worth. You just always kept to yourself too much, you know? Yeah, I said. I know. He left without buying anything. By the second month, I stopped trying to explain myself, even to me. When you lose your job, your reputation, your trade, you start to lose the shape of who you are. The world doesn't see you as a man anymore. Just a problem that got cleaned up. I still had my hands, my tools, my knowledge. But none of it mattered if no one wanted to see it. The loner. The weirdo. The guy who got too close to a younger coworker and paid the price. That was my name now. Damon Price. Erased without trial, without proof, without even a chance to say goodbye. And the worst part? It worked. I got used to the silence. The kind that hums in your ears when the engine's off, the sun's down, and you're parked behind a dollar store lot wondering if anyone will knock on your window. I lived like that for months. Jobs came when they came. Broken forklift at a feed mill. Malfunctioning gate motor at a scrapyard. Old guy in West Mifflin who needed his radial arm drill serviced and didn't care that I worked from a van. Most nights I slept on a camping pad wedged between toolboxes. When it got cold, I ran a space heater off a portable battery pack. When it got too hot, I'd park under an overpass and hope for shade. It wasn't living, not really, but it kept me moving. And moving kept me from thinking too much. I didn't talk to anyone from the plant. Didn't try. The only person who saw me more than once a week was a librarian in Monica named Ruth. She was maybe 50, wore cardigan sweaters year-round, and didn't flinch when I walked in greasy and tired. "You here for the manuals again?" she'd ask, like it was normal for a guy with oil-stained hands to spend his afternoons buried in machining textbooks. "I'm learning CAD," I told her once. "Need to stay sharp." "Then you need this," she said, sliding me a thick binder on CNC programming. "Try the Mastercam stuff. That's where everything's headed." She never asked questions. Never blinked at the fact I used their Wi-Fi for hours, printed out pages of tech sheets, borrowed books I had no address to return. She even left out an old laptop in the discard pile one day, said it didn't boot, but I fixed it in a night and used it for everything after. I poured myself into learning CNC software, modern PLCs, advanced automation systems. I knew my future in traditional machine repair was over. If I wanted to stay useful, I had to evolve. Sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll LinkedIn, just to torture myself. Jenna's profile was easy to find. She hadn't changed her last name. Jenna Markey, now listed as engineering manager, Hanford Steel Division. Profile banner of a high-tech factory floor. Picture of her in a blazer, arms crossed, smiling like the world had never burned down behind her. She'd posted an article titled, "Overcoming a Hostile Mentor: My Journey from Intern to Leader." The opening line hit like a hammer. When I started in manufacturing, I was taken under the wing of someone who controlled every aspect of my early development. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. The story was clear: a quiet, intense technician who used his expertise as leverage, who created an atmosphere that felt like mentorship but turned toxic when boundaries shifted. It was polished, clean, inspirational, even. Her comments were full of hearts and clapping emojis. "So proud of you. This is so important. Thank you for sharing. Young women in STEM need more voices like yours." She had over 4,000 followers. I had none. I closed the browser, powered the laptop off, just sat in the driver's seat, hands numb. It wasn't just that she'd erased me. It was that she'd replaced me, turned me into a bullet point in someone else's cautionary tale, a stepping stone in her redemption arc. And it worked. Of course it did. That's how the world spins. I tried dating once. A woman named Julie from a gas station up in Butler struck up a conversation while I was replacing brake pads in the parking lot. She liked that I worked with my hands. Said her ex never fixed anything, just made excuses. We went for coffee, laughed a little, made plans. Then she Googled me. I could tell by her face when I showed up for the second date. Tight smile. No eye contact. "I don't think this is gonna work," she said. She didn't need to explain. Someone, somewhere, had whispered something into the void, and that's all it took. Background checks. Closed-door stories. The digital ghost of a man people didn't want to be seen near. I stopped trying after that. Instead, I built routines. Fix. Read. Drive. Sleep. Repeat. The world forgot me. But I didn't forget what it took to survive it. I didn't expect the email. It came late on a Sunday, just as I was pulling into a truck stop south of Pittsburgh. I just finished rewiring a panel at a bakery whose conveyor system kept frying relays. I was sore, greasy, and craving something hot and cheap. I connected to the diner's free Wi-Fi just long enough to check messages. Subject line: private inquiry, regarding Jenna Markey. I almost deleted it. Figured it was spam. But something about the sender caught my eye. Evan.McElroy@brightlinagroup.com. Corporate address. Big energy firm. That name, Evan McElroy. I'd heard it before. Jenna's husband. I opened the message. "Damon, I apologize for contacting you this way. I know this may be unexpected, and I understand if you choose not to respond. But I've recently come across some information that's led me to ask questions about the incident at Hanford Steel. I've hired a private investigator, and your name came up multiple times. I'd appreciate the opportunity to speak, or if nothing else, to share what we've uncovered. I don't believe the story I was told anymore." Evan McElroy. My stomach flipped. I stared at the screen for a long time before responding with just 3 words. "Go ahead." He replied within the hour, attaching a PDF. The file was a report, 10 pages, clean formatting, timestamped photos, emails, and testimonies. My hand shook as I scrolled. The truth unfolded faster than I could absorb it. Jenna had been in a relationship with Greg, the vendor I confronted. They'd been seeing each other for nearly a year before she filed the complaint. Greg's company, Protégé, had landed a major contract with Hanford right around the time. The PI had screenshots of texts, emails, even calendar entries showing private meetings outside of company hours. He talked to 2 other employees who remembered seeing Greg leave Jenna's apartment late at night. One of them mentioned it to HR and was quietly moved to another department. It got worse. 3 weeks before the complaint against me, someone in Hanford's legal team had flagged a potential conflict of interest. vendor favoritism, and unreported personal relationships between staff and suppliers. Jenna's name was on the list. So was Greg's. The PI's summary was blunt. Based on timelines and available records, it's likely Ms. Markey preemptively filed a harassment complaint to deflect scrutiny and shift focus away from her own conduct. The alleged behavior attributed to Mr. Price appears exaggerated or contextualized to serve this goal. There it was. In writing. She didn't accuse me because she felt unsafe. She accused me to save her own skin. I leaned back in the booth, feeling the air drain from the room. I remembered the break room. Her crying. The fear in her eyes. And now I understood it. She wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid of what I might have seen. That confrontation with Greg, that was the moment everything cracked. She couldn't risk the wrong eyes connecting the dots. So she burned the whole house down and made sure I was standing closest to the fire. I clicked back to Evan's last message. I don't know what she told you, but I've seen the proof now. And I'm sorry. It wasn't justice. Not yet. But for the first time in 2 years, someone believed me. And it wasn't just anyone. It was her husband. It didn't take long after that. Evan set things in motion faster than I could have imagined. Within a week, he arranged a sit-down with his private investigator, a neutral attorney, and Jenna, no HR filters, no company handlers, just 4 people in a quiet office suite downtown. He didn't tell her I'd seen the report. Didn't warn her that the walls were already closing in. He just told her it was about some vendor discrepancies and that legal needed clarification. She showed up in a slate-gray dress, hair pinned, voice clipped, and polite. Classic Jenna, composed, unshakable. But the moment she saw the documents on the table, her face changed. 10 pages. Greg's messages. Flight confirmations. A receipt for a joint weekend getaway labeled Protégé's vendor event. She scanned them fast, but I saw the moment her eyes froze. She knew. And she knew it was over. Evan didn't raise his voice. Didn't yell. He just said, Jenna, I need the truth. All of it. Now. What followed wasn't loud or dramatic. She didn't scream. Didn't beg. She just slumped back in her chair, stared down at the table, and started talking. She admitted it. That she and Greg had been seeing each other. That she'd panicked when internal audit started sniffing around her vendor approvals. That she felt like everything she'd built was about to unravel. I thought if I filed the complaint first, maybe they'd stop looking so closely at me, she said, voice low. I didn't mean to. I didn't know it would go that far. But you let them destroy him, Evan said. Jenna closed her eyes. I was scared. And Damon, he was easy to isolate. He didn't talk to anyone. People already thought he was weird. I didn't expect it to stick the way it did. She signed a written statement. Full admission. False claims, motive, dates, everything. Evan had it notarized that same afternoon. The next morning, I walked into a law office for the first time since my suspension. The attorney Evan referred me to was sharp, quiet, and efficient. She reviewed the documents, filed a petition for record expungement, and launched a civil claim for reputational harm and wrongful suspension. I also wrote a letter, not to Jenna, but to Hanford's new HR director. The old one had resigned months prior, probably sensing the fallout that was coming. I attached the confession, a timeline, and a simple demand. Clear my record, or we go public. 2 weeks later, they settled. Quietly. My personnel file was wiped. My exit status updated to voluntary. They even sent a letter to the state licensing board correcting the disciplinary flag on my technical credentials. I was legally clean again. But that didn't mean I was whole. The settlement wasn't huge, just enough to pay off my van, buy some new gear, and breathe for the first time in years. I wasn't after money. I was after my name. And I got it back. Sort of. Evan called me once more, just after the final papers were signed. She hasn't told anyone yet, he said. Not even her parents. Doesn't matter, I said. Not anymore. I'm sorry it took this long. You were the only one who asked. There wasn't much else to say. I hung up, sat in the driver's seat of my van, watched the sun rise over the rail yard like I used to back when my mornings started with machine grease instead of legal filings. I hadn't forgiven her. I never would. But at least now, when I looked in the mirror, I saw my face again. Not the ghost she made me into. I never thought I'd see Jenna's parents again. They'd both worked at Hanford in different departments, her mom in accounting, her dad in logistics, retired by the time everything came down. Back when Jenna and I still talked, she used to say her dad thought I was too intense, and her mom said I needed to open up more if I ever wanted to move up. Not cruel, just distant. Like I was someone to keep at arm's length. After the accusation, they cut me off entirely. Not a call, not a message, not even a glance when we passed at the supermarket once. Just gone. So when I got a voicemail from Jenna's dad out of the blue, I didn't know what to think. Damon, this is Ron Markey. I heard about the statement. What happened? My wife and I would like to talk. If you're willing. I almost deleted it. Almost. But I didn't. We met at a diner in the middle of nowhere. One of those places with fake wood paneling, a dusty jukebox, and a waitress who called everyone Han. They were already seated when I walked in, Ron with his hands clasped tight on the table, Marlene stirring her coffee like it was a nervous tick. I slid into the booth across from them. They didn't speak at first. Marlene was the one who finally said it. "We owe you an apology." I didn't reply. Ron cleared his throat. "We believed what she told us. We thought you were taking advantage. We never questioned it. You didn't ask me once," I said. He flinched. "I know. And that's on us." They started listing regrets like confessions in a courtroom. They should have spoken up at the plant. Should have questioned HR. Should have at least reached out instead of assuming I was guilty. It was all the usual shame, hindsight, too little, too late. Then Marlene pulled an envelope from her bag, pushed it across the table. "It's not much," she said, "but it's something. For what you lost." I looked at it. Didn't touch it. "You raised her," I said quietly. "You watched her climb the ladder on my back. And when she pushed me off it, you stood there and let it happen." Marlene's hand shook slightly. "You told people I was dangerous," I said. "You let them think I was obsessed. You let me rot." Ron looked down at the table. Couldn't meet my eyes. "You want to make this right?" I asked. They nodded, almost in sync. "Then tell people the truth. Say what she did. Own what you let happen." Ron finally looked up, his face pale. "She's our daughter. And I was a human being." They didn't have anything to say after that. I stood up, left the envelope on the table, walked out without another word. The parking lot was quiet. Just my van, their Buick, and a single flickering street lamp overhead. I climbed in, shut the door, and stared at my hands. They were still calloused, still marked with grease and time and work. But for the first time in years, they weren't shaking. I didn't need their money. I needed them to sit in the same silence they gave me, to feel it, to choke on it. It started with a leak. A redacted HR document made its way onto an anonymous forum used by industrial contractors. Nothing flashy, just a PDF with a company header, a few blacked-out names, and enough breadcrumbs for anyone paying attention to piece it together. It didn't take long for someone to connect the dots. Hanford Steel, engineering manager, false allegations. Then it hit Reddit. Then industry blogs. And just like that, Jenna's version of the story began to crack. At first, she tried to deny it. Her LinkedIn profile stayed up, polished and proud. She posted a vague note about online harassment and misinformation campaigns. But the comments turned fast. Didn't she accuse someone and then admit she made it all up? Y'all remember that article she wrote about toxic mentorship? Pretty ironic now. Anyone know where Damon Price is now? Dude got railroaded. By the end of the week, Hanford released a statement. Dry. Legal. Carefully crafted. Due to a recent internal review, engineering manager Jenna Markey is no longer employed by Hanford Steel. We take workplace integrity seriously and are committed to fostering a culture of transparency and accountability. She was gone. No farewell post. No thank you for the memories. Just vanished. And with her exit came the fallout. Evan filed for divorce the following Monday. Public record. He cited irreconcilable differences rooted in dishonesty and professional misconduct. I saw the court document when it went up on the county clerk's site. One sentence stood out. The marriage deteriorated after significant professional deception and reputational damage. People started talking. Vendors, old coworkers, even her own friends. They whispered about how she manipulated the system, how she framed someone to save herself, how she wrote a lie all the way to the top, and then fell off the edge. The same people who once clapped for her resilience now scrubbed their social media clean. Mentions gone. Tags deleted. No one wanted to be tied to her name. And me? I was rebuilding. I'd started my own consultancy, small-scale robotics, precision automation for small factories, mom-and-pop operations. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Word spread through real referrals, the kind you can't fake. The ones that come from doing the work and doing it right. I never used my story to advertise. I didn't need to. My name, once whispered like a warning, was now something else. Respected. Maybe even feared. One afternoon, I came back to my office, a modest shop off Route 18, and found an envelope on the floor, slid under the door. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a handwritten letter. Damon. There's nothing I can say that will undo what I did. I've lost everything, and I know it's because of the choices I made, choices I can never take back. I told myself I was protecting my future. But the truth is, I destroyed yours to save mine. That's not strength. That's cowardice. I'm sorry. I won't ask for forgiveness. You don't owe me that. Jenna. There was no contact info. No plea. Just that. I folded it once, twice, tucked it into the back of a drawer I never opened. It didn't change anything. But it was something. She was right. I didn't owe her forgiveness. And she was never getting it. The settlement check came on a Thursday. White envelope. No return address. Postmarked from a town 2 hours away. Inside was a cashier's check for $30,000, issued by Hanford Steele's legal department, marked Final Remediation, no obligation to cash. Probably sent by someone trying to sleep better at night. I stared at it for a while. Then I walked outside, lit a match, and watched it burn on the gravel behind my shop. Let someone else cash their silence. I had work to do. That weekend, I spoke at a private conference for mid-career technicians and shop leads, a closed-door event for tradespeople trying to navigate the mess of corporate politics, reputation risk, and HR minefields. My talk wasn't listed on the schedule. I wasn't introduced by name. I stood in the back of the room in a plain work shirt, no title, no company logo, and told a story. Not my story. Not in detail. Just the kind of story where a technician gets buried by a false narrative, and no one stands up until it's too late. I talked about protecting yourself. About documenting everything. About how silence from your coworkers is its own kind of betrayal. I told them, if you're the guy who works alone, the guy who doesn't do office politics, the guy who locks his tool bay because he doesn't trust anyone not to mess with his process, keep doing it. Keep the receipts. Because when the storm hits, no one's coming to save you. There was a long silence when I finished. A few people nodded. One guy in the back raised his hand. What happened to the guy in that story? He asked. I paused. Smiled. Just a little. He made it out. That night, I drove home in the dark. Windows down. Air cool. No voicemail waiting. No calls. Just me and the road. I didn't forgive Jenna. Didn't forgive Hanford. Didn't forgive the people who said nothing while I was dragged under. But I let it go. All of it. Because the future I was building now wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving to myself I was still here. Still standing. Still mine.